Hello, this is Mike Jenkins back with episode 5 of the She-Ra Princess of Power Comprehensive Review. And today we have Double Trouble, also known as Double Mischief because of copyright or trademark issues, also known as Rebecca Kettle. Don't know where that last name came from, but that was part of the Masters of the Universe Classics creativity, in some people may or may not call her Rebecca. Anyway, Double Trouble was released in 1985. She was part of the first wave of Princess of Power toys to be released, and she was a Great Rebellion character. You'll notice that her classics figure, I have her posed with some Evil Horde gadgets. Her classics figure here came with a crossbow, as was typical of a lot of Evil Horde characters. And she also has a staff that is Evil Horde. The staff did not come with her classics figure. That actually came with a figure that came later in the line called the Horde Wraith. But I really prefer, personally, having Double Trouble as an Evil Horde character. And so this was my way of doubling up on Horde representation for the toy. It would be great if I could get a Horde emblem to put on her chest, but that not happened yet. So maybe someday, but this is the way I'll represent Double Trouble in my classics toy line. But I digress. I need to go back, start from the beginning, start from where she came from, how she developed. I don't have that much information on her because she is such an elusive character and doesn't have much history. She came out in 1985 in the Princess of Power toy line. She never appeared in the show and had very limited exposure in the media for Princess of Power. If we take a look at the prototype shots that I've been showing in the series that we got from He-Man.org, you'll see that Double Trouble came in a color scheme that, interestingly enough, is very similar to what Glimmer had as a color scheme on the Princess of Power cartoon series. Double Trouble originally, or very early on, had a color scheme of purples and blues. And the way the prototype lineup was looking, it looks as if she was originally intended to be a minion of Catra. The He-Man Masters of the Universe toy line originally started with 8 characters. 4 good, 4 evil. And the Princess of Power toy line, the makers of Princess of Power, wanted to mirror the successes of Masters of the Universe as well as the successes of Barbie. And so to start off with, they were going to start with 8 characters, and they were going to have 4 good characters and 4 evil characters. That's the way it looks. So we had our playset, we had the Crystal Castle, we had some beasts and steeds, very similar to Masters of the Universe. Some of those beasts, as I call them, were Enchanta, who some will conjecture takes the place of the Wind Raider in the Princess of Power toy line. Not quite a technological vehicle, but a vehicle in the sense that it could carry more than one character into adventures. And then we had the good characters and the bad characters. So Catra had to have 3 minions, similar to how Skeletor had 3 minions in the 1982 Masters of the Universe lineup. And it looks like the way the lineup goes that the toy designers originally intended for Castaspella, Glimmer, and Double Trouble to be in cahoots with Catra. Toy testing said, no, we can't do that. We can't have all of these villains. And so the only character to remain in the villainous lineup is Catra. Glimmer, Double Trouble, and Castaspella were all taken over to the Great Rebellion. And along with that, toy testing suggested that blues and reds and hard colors had to be removed from the toy line. And so Double Trouble was selected to have her color scheme totally revamped. And she went from the blues and the purples to the greens, the silver, the gold. Double Trouble's action feature is her ability to switch her face. She can switch it from a good face to an evil face. And so that tied into what her character was about, since she was no longer a villain, presumably, and she was now a spy for the Great Rebellion. That meant that she could spy on Catra. She could pose as a minion of Catra and take Catra's secrets and plans back to the Great Rebellion. And so to show that off in the toy line, her face can switch from good to evil. And so this is where I suspect issues came up with Double Trouble as a character and why she had limitations in the toy line. She never appeared on the cartoon. She did debut in the mini comic series in the Adventure of the Blue Diamond, and also appeared in the Golden Book, Glimmer of Hope. And she does have appearances in coloring books in the UK comics, but her exposure is pretty limited, and pretty much what we do see for her is that she spies on Catra and she takes that intel back to She-Ra and the Great Rebellion. Double Trouble was planned for the cartoon series. She does appear in the She-Ra Princess of Power cartoon Bible. She is the cousin of Glimmer, and she is the princess from the Kingdom of Green Glade. On the show, she would have had the honor of being able to take on various disguises and would have the ability to escape out of certain sticky, tight situations. It's also listed in her Bible entry that she is not necessarily all that trusted by her compatriots in the Great Rebellion. So she might have had a tough time fitting in on that show because of the fact that she's playing around with the Horde, spying on the Horde. So characters on the Evil Horde side might not trust her that much. But the same is true for the Great Rebellion not trusting her as well. That ambiguity is probably why Double Trouble had the limited exposure and just didn't make it into the show. A character in the Masters of the Universe named Zodak had similar issues. He started off as a villain and then was switched to neutral and then switched to good. Actually, he started off as a neutral character and then was switched to evil Cosmic Warrior, then to just Cosmic Warrior, neutral, and then he seemed to take on more of a neutral to good quality on the Filmation show. But Zodak himself had limited exposure and was eventually just phased out of Masters of the Universe. And the same essentially happened to Double Trouble. She had her limited exposure in the mini comic. She only appeared once in the mini comic series, and she appeared in a couple of the storybooks, the UK comics, and coloring books. But beyond that, she didn't have any exposure in the show. And after Wave 1, she had no exposure at all. Here is Double Trouble's vintage figure. She's from my collection and does have some playwear. There's some tears on her cape, and she's lost a lot of hair. Let's see. Her main feature is her ability to change her face. So this is Double Trouble as a Great Rebellion character, and with the dial on her back, this is Double Trouble as a villainous character. Very similar to a character in the Masters of the Universe toy line by the name of Manny Faces. Manny Faces here has 3 faces, and by turning the dial on his head there, you get the robot, you get the mobster, and you get the standard Manny face. I can't stand Manny up. He's had some aging over the years, so he is not, his rubber bands are in need of some major replacement. But that is the action feature that Double Trouble took on. Princess of Power tended to do that, where it would borrow or take influence for its features from the Masters of the Universe toy line. Often designers would look at Masters of the Universe and say, oh, what's going on over there? And maybe we can find a way to bring that over to Princess of Power. And so that is the case with Double Trouble. She does not have articulation in the head because of her action feature, but she does have the standard arm articulation. She does have waist articulation and, of course, the leg articulation. She came with her skirt, which is removable, as well as her cape, which is removable as well. And there we have Double Trouble. I'll just take a tour of the back as well. You can see the dial on her back that spins her face. And that is Double Trouble. Here is Masters of the Universe Classics Double Trouble, or as she was released, Double Mischief. There were trademark issues with the use of the name Double Trouble, so Mattel had to go with Double Mischief, but everyone calls her Double Trouble. Again, as I said earlier, I display Double Trouble with the Evil Horde. I display her as a villain. Many fans will display Double Trouble as a Great Rebellion character because that's the way she was intended to be displayed. That's what she is in the toy line. In most of the fiction, or all of the fiction, she is a Great Rebellion character. She would have been that on the show. So a lot of collectors, a lot of fans see Double Trouble as a good gal. I personally always felt that Catra needed more help on her side in the Princess of Power toy line. There are potentially 2 ways of looking at Princess of Power. You have the cartoon depiction of Princess of Power, where you have the Great Rebellion versus the Evil Horde. And then you also have what I call the Minitheria or Minetheria, interpretation of Princess of Power, where Catra is the main villain and she leads the evil forces against She-Ra. She's She-Ra's main nemesis. And so, looking at that interpretation of things, Catra doesn't have that many friends. She doesn't have that many allies other than the cat goblins and the cat birds and the phantoms that she conjures to take on her enemies. And so, to me, Double Trouble should have been one of Catra's minions. That's just my logic. Everyone else has their logic, and that's what makes it fun to collect. The crossbow has the ability to switch allegiances as well. So Double Trouble can have a good crossbow, or she can have that Evil Horde crossbow. I'll take the staff off here. On this version of Double Trouble, her face turns via the dial on the top of her head versus on her back. So she can have the good look, or she can have the evil look. She has no articulation in the head or in the neck, but she does have hair articulation. The hair can spin in various ways. She has the shoulder articulation, bicep, elbow, wrist. The dress is somewhat malleable, so she can do splits so that she can sit on a horse. She's got the knee articulation, and she's got the ankle that goes up and down, and also side to side if you wanted to try to do some wide stances there. Her cape is not removable. Her cape and collar are not removable, but it's a translucent, semi-hard plastic there. And this figure was released in 2014 in Club Etheria. So there were 7 characters or 7 figures total that were released in that line. And that is my review of Double Trouble. Join me next time for episode 6 when we review Entrapta, the tricky golden beauty, the only minion of Catra in the Princess of Power toy line. Until then, ta-ta for now.